One of Washington's starters is losing his job right now, and John KEIM already confirmed it out of Ashburn. 11 misses in 4 practices, and in a minute I'll tell you who it is and how Adam Peters already lined up the exit. Meanwhile, the DMV is coming home. Builder locked in for the new RFK stadium, but there's a date attached you're not gonna love. And Jayden Daniels torched Miami's secondary with a 70-yard bomb nobody saw coming. Raise hail. Let's talk about Jake Moody, and I want to be completely honest with you from the first line here. This worries me more than most people are giving it credit for right now, and I think it has to be the lead story today, ahead of the stadium, ahead of everything else, because this touches directly on what it's going to cost this team in close games come November. According to Grant Paulson, one of the reporters who covers Commanders training camp best on a day-to-day basis, Moody has missed 11 kicks over the last 4 practices. 11 in 4 practices. That's a pattern repeating itself with a consistency that's starting to get concerning. Not one bad day, but here's the detail that actually changes the picture, and a lot of channels still aren't telling it right. This didn't start as a one-sided collapse. Moody and Drew Stevens, the undrafted rookie kicker out of Iowa, finished minicamp tied 6 for 6, and the first weeks of camp were kick for kick with basically no separation. The turn came last week. John KEIM reported on August 8th that Stevens hit from 33, 38, 43, 47, and 52 yards while Moody started showing cracks, and that's when the story shifted from an even battle to Stevens taking the lead. Monday, August 10th was flat out brutal for both of them. Moody missed 4 straight attempts from 44, 49, 51, and 55 yards, finishing that period 2 for 6, and Stevens wasn't sharp either, missing 3 attempts that same day. So it's not that Stevens is kicking perfectly while Moody hands him the job. Both of them had a horrible Monday. The difference, and this is the part that matters, is the trend behind those numbers. Stevens walked into that bad day off a near-flawless stretch, and Moody walked into that same bad day off a stretch that was already deteriorating. When both guys have a rough day, the guy with credit banked wins the narrative, and that's Stevens. Now, I want us to understand why this isn't just an August problem. It's a structural issue this front office has been carrying for 2 years. Washington has been on what several outlets are already calling the kicker carousel since Adam Peters and Dan Quinn took over in 2024. They cut Brandon McManus after he faced a civil lawsuit, and since then, the roster has run through 6 different kickers appearing in games: Cade York, Austin Seibert, Greg Joseph, Zane Gonzalez, Matt Gay, and Jake Moody himself. Cade York lasted about a week. Seibert started well, but an injury ended that run. Gonzalez won a playoff game with his own particular mannerisms, but still got released after the season. And Matt Gay, who signed the most guaranteed money a kicker has ever gotten in this franchise, ended up making just 13 of 19 attempts, a brutal 4 of 9 from beyond 50 yards, before getting cut mid-season and leaving dead money on the cap. Last season, with all that instability, Washington finished 22nd in the league in field goal attempts per game, 28th in field goals made per game, and 29th, nearly dead last, in conversion rate. And that's a team that made a deep playoff run, which honestly makes it more alarming because it means they won in spite of the position, not because of it. So when I see 11 missed kicks in 4 practices, I don't see it as one isolated bad stretch for one random kicker. I see it as the latest chapter in a problem this front office hasn't solved in 2 full years, despite trying 6 different solutions. And I'm putting my opinion on the table without any filter here, because that's what these videos are for. Signing Moody this year for just $125,000 guaranteed dollars inside a 1-year, $1.5 million contract with a cap hit of $1.7 million according to SpotRack and Over the Cap was never a real vote of confidence. It was cheap insurance. The team deliberately left the door open by signing Stevens as an undrafted free agent, and now that Stevens is winning the competition on the field, it costs Washington next to nothing to cut Moody if they decide to, because the dead money is minimal. That contract structure tells you everything you need to know about how much confidence this front office actually had in Moody from day one. For a little human context here, Moody landed in Washington last year straight off the Chicago Bears practice squad after San Francisco cut him in September of 2025 following 2 missed attempts in 3 tries during week 1. And there's an irony here I won't get tired of repeating. His debut with the Bears came against, of all teams, the Commanders in Week 6, going 4 for 5. Washington saw that, and months later ended up signing the same kicker who'd hurt them from the other sideline. Over his final 6 games with Washington last season, Moody made 10 of 11 field goals and 10 of 11 extra points, good enough to earn this year's contract renewal. And there's one more detail that adds flavor to this whole story. Deebo Samuel, who's now Moody's teammate in Washington as a free agent, was actually his teammate in San Francisco back when he confronted him mid-game in 2024 after a string of missed kicks. That moment stuck in the collective memory of Niners fans, and now the two of them share a locker room again. Life takes some strange turns, I swear. Drew Stevens, for his part, arrives without that weight. Across his 4 years as a starter at Iowa, he made 76 of 95 field goal attempts, about 78%, and 124 of 126 extra points, nearly 98.4%. He's got real leg strength for the 50 to 60 yard range that's becoming more common around the league, including a 58-yard field goal against Oregon last year. And according to Hogs Haven, he's got something that sometimes matters more than the leg, proven mental resilience, having bounced back from getting benched during his sophomore year to end up as one of the most decorated kickers in Hawkeyes history. Dan Quinn has already said publicly that he wants this competition to stretch all the way through the preseason to see how both guys handle real game pressure, so this isn't getting decided this week. I'm gonna give you my prediction, and I want it on the record with a date attached, because on this channel we commit to what we say. Given the trend we're seeing and how cheap it is for Washington to cut Moody in cap terms, I believe that if Jake Moody doesn't turn this stretch around decisively over the next 2 preseason games, Drew Stevens walks away with the starting kicker job before the final roster cut down on August 26th. I could be wrong. We're only just past the halfway point of camp, and a kicker with Moody's real NFL experience still has room to stabilize. If I'm wrong, I'll say so right here in a future video. No excuses. And I want to close this argument by explaining why this isn't just a nitpicky analyst's pet peeve. This offense, with Jayden Daniels maturing the way he's maturing, is going to produce more drives that stall out 10 or 15 yards short of the end zone without reaching the goal line, simply because that's how elite level football works against defenses that are also improving. Those drives turn into field goal attempts, not automatic touchdowns. If the kicker misses 1 out of every 4 or 5 tries, like what's happening right now in camp, that gap alone can swing 2 or 3 close games during the regular season. Washington already paid that price last year, finishing nearly dead last in the league in field goal conversion while making a playoff run. Imagine what this team could be if that specific weakness stopped being a weakness. To close out this story, there was also some roster movement on Tuesday that connects directly to this pattern of instability at specific positions. Washington waived offensive lineman Salah Amave Laulu, who came in as a 6th-round pick from the Ravens back in 2023 and never quite settled in because of hand technique issues, and also waived defensive back Robert McDaniel. With those open spots, the team signed defensive tackle Byron Cowart and linebacker Curtis Jacobs, who's coming off a solid season with the DC Defenders in the UFL, posting 50 tackles, 1 sack, and a 75-point defensive grade according to PFF. Jacobs already had brief stints with New England and Tennessee, so in practice this is simply roster depth fighting for a spot on the 53-man squad. Okay, we talked about the kicker drama. Now let's get to something that's pure cause for celebration, because the new stadium finally has a builder. On Tuesday, the franchise announced it has a construction team for the new $3.8 billion stadium going up exactly where the old RFK stadium stood, right on the Anacostia River. And this isn't Tyson's, this isn't Virginia, this isn't any of the alternate sites that got floated around for years. This is the same ground where this franchise won all 3 of its Super Bowl titles, and there's something poetically correct about going back to that exact spot. The project went to a joint venture called Clark, Mortensen, Smoot DC, 3 construction companies with real resumes. Clark and Smoot already worked together on Nationals Park, which opened in 2008 with room for 41,000 fans. Clark is also currently handling the Capital One Arena renovation, with delivery expected in 2027, and Mortensen is right now building the new Coliseum Continental in Oklahoma City and the Denver Summit FC Stadium. Matt Haas, the Commanders' head of construction, put it plainly in the team statement. They wanted a group with the experience, the local commitment, and the shared vision to deliver one of the most important projects in franchise history. Let's talk numbers. The stadium will have a roof, it will hold 65,000 fans, and it will cost $3.8 billion total. The Commanders are putting up $2.7 billion out of their own pocket, and DC's government is kicking in an additional $1.1 billion, though that money isn't going toward the stadium itself, it's going toward road and utility infrastructure around the campus. That distinction matters because it's exactly the kind of detail that gets flattened when people boil this down to the government is paying for a billionaire's stadium. That's not what's happening here. DC's council already approved the full project back in September 2025 by a vote of 11-2, so the political fight is already settled and has been for almost a year now. The roofed stadium will only take up 11% of the site's 180-acre campus. The rest is going toward housing, parks, and retail, designed by the same firm behind SoFi Stadium and AT&T Stadium, since the design work belongs to HKS. And because it has a roof, the venue will be able to host more than 200 events a year, not just regular season games. I'm going to ask the uncomfortable question almost nobody's asking right now in the middle of all this excitement. Vertical construction starts in spring 2027, and the opening is projected for spring 2030, 3 years for a nearly $4 billion roofed stadium with a full commercial district built around it. Projects of this scale almost never hit their original timeline exactly, and if we start hearing about 6-month delays here and there in 2028, it won't shock me. What I do think deserves unqualified praise is the local hiring piece. The Commanders are going to prioritize hiring DC residents and using certified business enterprises, companies certified as minority or women-owned. The city government estimates that between stadium construction and campus development, this will generate 14,000 temporary jobs and 2,000 permanent ones. While all of this machinery gets moving, life goes on at FedEx Field, which stays the Commanders' home until the new stadium opens, with the next big date there being the preseason matchup against the Ravens on August 28th. But sit with this image for a second. Almost 35 years after leaving DC in 1997, for the first time there's an actual date with a signed construction team and a closed budget. For the Commanders to go back to playing inside the city limits that gave them all 3 of their championships. Now let's get to the field, because what happened today at the joint practice against Miami deserves its own space too. The Commanders and the Dolphins had their joint practice this Wednesday at the Big Bear AI Performance Center in Ashburn, ahead of Friday's preseason matchup, and according to field reports from Joe Schad of the Palm Beach Post, Jayden Daniels had the kind of day that leaves an opposing coach quiet on the walk back to the locker room. Daniels was connecting with receivers against Miami's secondary consistently, including a play where he found Chigokonkwo working against Miles Battle and Major Burns. The play that actually got me off the couch was a different one, Treylon Burks beating Zane Anderson and Michael Taffa for a 70-yard touchdown served straight from Jayden Daniels. When you've got 2 defenders covering the same zone and the quarterback still finds the window to throw 70 yards downfield with precision, that tells you about a level of coverage reading that goes way past raw physical talent. We're talking about anticipation, field vision, the ability to process the coverage disguise before the ball even leaves his hand. Terry McLaurin also put his signature on the day with a sideline catch that requires total body control, and after everything that happened with his contract this offseason, seeing him work this comfortably in August is a sign the relationship with the team is still solid. On the defensive line, Washington dominated Miami during the one-on-one drills. Darren Payne beat Jonas Avainea. Odafe Owie got right around Patrick Paul. Javon Kinlaw put a swim move on Kadeem Proctor. And Kaylavon Chason got past Austin Jackson like he wasn't even there. And according to Commanders.com's own recap, he basically lived in the backfield the entire practice. It's a pattern showing up rep after rep, and that pattern tells me the front 7 under Dan Quinn is still the heart of this defense. And to close it out with a defensive exclamation point, here's the full play of the day. Mike Sainristil intercepted Malik Willis after stepping in front of Malik Washington on the route and took it back for a touchdown, celebrating afterward by punting the ball into the air like he was clearing a punt. That's a cornerback who understands Dan Quinn's coverage system well enough to play on instinct instead of thinking through the play while it's happening. Terry McLaurin wasn't the only standout receiver either. Stefon Diggs also had a strong day, winning his one-on-one matchups against Miami's secondary, including a tough catch with solid coverage from AJ. Green draped on him. My honest take here, joint preseason practices have their limits as an indicator. Not every team brings the same intensity or the full game plan to one of these, so I'm not drawing final conclusions from one Wednesday in August. But when you see your franchise quarterback connecting on 70-yard plays against double coverage and your defensive line winning basically every individual matchup, it's hard not to get excited thinking about what this offense and this defense can be once the regular season actually kicks off. And there you have it. A day that perfectly sums up what it means to follow this team. Real anxiety over what's happening with Jake Moody, total euphoria over the stadium, and genuine hype over what Jayden Daniels is doing on the field. That's this franchise for you. It never gives you a quiet moment to breathe. If you ask me, with everything we saw today, the scale still tips toward the positive side, but the kicker problem is real, and this front office needs to actually solve it after 2 full years of trying solutions that haven't stuck. Tell me down in the comments what got more of a reaction out of you today: Moody's fall, the stadium announcement, or the Jayden Daniels play. I want to read every single answer. If this video gave you something, drop a like and subscribe. We're back tomorrow with more. See you in the next one.